Hello, I'm Rochelle Carey, stepping in for Femi Oke, who is on a well-deserved holiday. Welcome to this bonus edition of The Stream, where we take you behind the scenes so you can catch the conversations that take place after the broadcast ends. Coming up, what must Pakistan do to put an end to violence against women? And a look at the discussion over the potential risks and rewards of deep-sea mining. 2 years ago, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government revoked the special status given to Indian-administered Kashmir in 1954. The government says that in the past 2 years, things have gotten better, pointing to improved infrastructure and an uptick in social development. But journalists and activists argue that the economy, human rights situation, and security have all gotten worse for Kashmiris since 2019. I recently spoke with a member of the BJP, a journalist, and a historian to ask what the revocation of special status has meant for Kashmiris. It was a conversation that deserved extra attention. So after the broadcast, I shared a video from one of the stream's viewers with our guests. This is Farah Bashir. Have a listen to what she had to say and then how the guests responded.
In the last couple of years, Kashmiris don't only fear for their lives, but with all markers of identity gone, such as the constitution and the flag, and with new laws implemented in the place, such as expediting of domicile laws or opening up business opportunities to non-locals, whereas locals have no access to internet, it gives rise to a different kind of fear where Kashmiris are face-to-face, are confronting an impending mortality of their identity, an impending mortality of their land, of their home. And it gives rise to a very different kind of fear of how much more loss one has to endure in the near future.
Now, Hina, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but based on some of the conversation we had, I feel like you disagree with her, which I guess you're entitled to, but you can't really negate that people actually feel that way. Some people, at least.
Yeah, definitely, some people, but we can't say the majority. We can't compare what few people feel about abrogation and what changes they see, what future they see. I see a better Kashmir. I have dreamt of a better Kashmir since I have seen killings.
But what would you say to those people? What would you say to them? How would you reach out to them?
Definitely. See, we have always been short of leadership in Jammu and Kashmir. There has been a brain drain, militancy activity, killings every day. I think since I'm aware about the world, I have seen shutdowns. I have seen calls from the separatist group that Kashmir under lockdown. The change is there, definitely. Just one embedded sentiment. What we have lost cannot, all the time, we cannot lose our loved ones. We have grown our graveyards in every nook and corner of Jammu and Kashmir. What are we fighting for this Article 370 or debating when all the Kashmiris will be killed by their own people who go and pick up guns, who are militants, who are killing their own brothers?
Okay, so all right, okay, hold on. Okay. So Sadiq, what would you say to that? She is trying to make the case that this was necessary, and quite frankly, it had been kind of a gradual. While it felt sudden at the time, I'm sure very jarring and traumatic. Hadn't it been a gradual sort of moving away? Anyway, once we got to the point where Article 370 was revoked, wasn't this a gradual thing?
Frankly, I mean, the Article 370 and its derogation, because it has not been abrogated, it's still on the books. And it's still on the books because it is very complicated to get it off the books. It speaks to the structure of the thing, of the Indian Constitution. But I think that gradual is true, because I think that the BJP has had it on its agenda ever since its inception, or the inception of the ideology it represents, which is about 95 years old now, and it has been. So yes, there's been a gradual tendency to try to come towards it. But I'm, more curious about, Hina Bhatt talking about, the killings and so forth, and how she wants it all to stop. There's a very easy way to stop it. If they take away the military forces that we have over here and the kind of draconian laws that we have, which allows the military to act with impunity, towards anything, towards any kind of protests and so forth. She has alluded several times to the fact that, there has been nothing or lessening of protests since over the last 2 years. That's very true, and there's a very good reason for it, because it's a shoot and sight atmosphere. And at the very least, you can be taken away if you're found protesting, even if you're protesting about not having electricity or not having water in your village, you can be taken away and locked away. And a lot of people have had that done. So I think, it's very hard to describe what it is like to live in the kind of atmosphere that we've had in the last, the last 30 years, but I think specifically in the last 2 years, because the impunity with which people can act has been, I think multiplied several times.
Okay, Gaur. Yeah. So Gaur, obviously Sadiq and Hina are describing two different environments. How would you characterize how someone living in Indian-administered Kashmir might feel now? Is it fair to say that some of them might feel hopeless?
It is actually, it's not only hopelessness, but it's despondency. I would go on to extend that it is, the fear is so much that it's the fear about identity. It is the fear about that a vast majority feels that it has been a BJP's civilizational and ideological agenda to erase memories of Muslim Kashmir, to erase culture, to erase identity. And they see, the vast majority sees it as a smash and grab operation. And, Access Now is a Delhi-based NGO which tracks internet shutdowns. And it said 55-day long internet shutdown was witnessed in Jammu and Kashmir. And then our friend, Ms. Hina, says that everything is hunky-dory. And courts continue to ignore habeas corpus petitions, even of former chief ministers who were locked down, and even pro-India political parties. Everyone was behind the bars. Ministry of Home Affairs, India, told the parliament that there have, 7,357 people were arrested, detained, or placed under house arrest. And if that is normal, I leave it to your imagination if all of that suspension of civil liberties, obliterating the middle ground, no internet, no communication, no freedom of speech, if that is normal, I leave it to your imagination.
So what life is like for Kashmiris clearly depends on whom you ask. Next up, deep sea mining. Is it a good idea? Some say there are resources at the bottom of the ocean that could be critical for solving renewable energy problems. Critics, though, are warning of irreversible disaster to ocean life if this mining actually begins. The conversation is heating up as the UN body in charge of the seabed is likely to make a decision about whether one island in the South Pacific can begin extracting those minerals. One of our viewers, an associate professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, believes that deep sea mining is a necessity. So have a listen to what he had to say and then stick around to see if our guests agreed.
When it comes to the question of is this needed, are there more pros than cons when it comes to deep sea mining? I think there are more pros, because if you look at the world's land mining industry today, many of the big deposits are getting emptied. There are a lot of issues regarding work environment. And I think that it's also fair to give the whole world a chance to do mineral extraction of such important materials.
Yes, I mean, I think the issue here is that we need to have multiple options for supply. It's just like with energy. My fear is that we will go down the path of what happened with nuclear energy. The activist community, well-intentioned as it was, they conflated nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. We ended up with making nuclear energy uneconomical, and we ended up with a climate crisis which could have been prevented if we had actually continued with nuclear power, which is far safer than any other form of energy per unit output. So the same could happen. If you use the precautionary principle inappropriately, you could end up in a worse situation than what you would have wanted to prevent. So this is my concern. And the only reason why I'm not gung-ho about deep sea mining. All I'm saying is give it an opportunity to proceed. There will be ample time to do biodiversity assessments. So there will be no project approved without a very detailed environmental and social impact assessment. And that's where the activist community should constructively engage, rather than just scoring points on getting a moratorium. It's much easier to score points on campaigns where you want to stop something rather than trying to actually build and do something.
Okay, all right, Maureen. Maureen gets to certainly gets to respond to that.
Look, I really object to that particular point of view about civil society just being in this the game to make life difficult for everybody. I think we, as I've said, from the Pacific, we have real experiences with this new industry within our territorial waters, but we can see the role of our governments as sponsoring states in the area itself also. There is a bigger question that I think as a society as a whole, this is in the area commonly known as the heritage of mankind, and yet we as civil society and as the public have had very little say because governments and contractors are designing these rules about what is necessary. In terms of options, sure, but we should give all other options, including recycling options, also the best chance going forward. We know that we should not be transferring the burden of the kinds of mistakes we made with the coal, oil, and gas industry with this particular one. We would be looking at generations to clean up what decisions we take today. So I think there are some really contentious issues. It is okay to be contentious, partly because obviously the points of view are at different levels of the spectrum, but we would still challenge whether, to what extent should we allow or not allow deep sea mining to go ahead. That's still a relevant question for society as a whole in the area commonly known as the common heritage of mankind.
Daniel, you're smarter on these things than I am. How much traction, how much power do environmentalists and activists have in driving this dialogue, this conversation as it goes forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, that remains to be seen. I think in recent years, there definitely has been an increasingly vocal opposition to deep sea mining, or at least an increasingly vocal call for a moratorium to hit pause on this industry. And, those calls are coming from scientists, conservationists, some governments as well. And I think it's important to look at that. At the same time, we're on this other track. When you look at investment into this industry, right now we have this company, the metals company, which is basically getting itself listed on the stock market, on the NASDAQ, in order to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to start investing in some of these operations down the line. So I think it's really important to, keep both these things in mind, that on one side, when it comes to kind of the financing, this industry is moving ahead while, civil society is still having this very important debate about whether or not we should be doing this at all.
I think one just last point is that I have great respect for civil society, and they have an important role to play to hold these companies to account. So I think that's the role they should continue to play in terms of making sure, like they're doing with Deep Green, and making sure that there is transparency. All those things are very important. But unfortunately, we are in a real conundrum with climate change. And the situation is imminent. Recycling is the goal. Deep Green, unlike other companies, wants to get into the recycling business. They have said, even Gerard Barron, who was vilified by the civil society groups, he has said that he wants enough metal stocks from deep sea mining to start recycling and no more. He does not, once we have enough stock for recycling, go into a circular economy model. And that should be the goal. I agree on that point for all of us.
Clearly a consensus that we are in a climate crisis. What to do about it, that's still up for debate. Finally, a very important conversation around violence against women is taking place in Pakistan as the nation reacts to the horrific murder of Noor Muqaddam. Recently on the stream, Femi Oke spoke with 3 women from Pakistan. Malika Bukhari, the Parliamentary Secretary for Law and Justice, Kunwal Ahmed, an activist and community leader, and one of Al Jazeera's own producers, Alia Chugtai. Our community had a lot to say on the topic, including one woman who says that the Pakistani government has yet to clearly communicate that sexism and misogyny will not be tolerated. So have a listen.
In the past couple of weeks ago, a very senior minister, a very senior member of the ruling party addressed a rally in Pakistan where thousands of people attended. And over there, he joked about slapping a female politician who was from a rival political party. And no action was taken against him. There were no consequences. So there needs to be a clear message from the government that misogyny, sexism will not be tolerated within the parliament or outside of the parliament. And that message has still not come across.
Vanessa is being very careful there. She's not mentioning any names. Alia, you are nodding your head. I am wondering about the examples being set from the top in Pakistan, from the leadership, from the politicians. Alia, you go first.
Yeah, the thing is that, what Malika is saying is very valid, that there's 22% or, roughly about 20 to 30% representation. The Prime Minister Khan's cabinet is 4 women out of 53 people. In order to make things better for women, there needs to be better female representation. Malika was part of a press conference not too long ago with a couple of other MNAs talking about how Prime Minister Khan is the symbol of women empowerment. But don't we need more women representing the country when we are 50% of the country?
Let me bring
I also want to add something to Alia's point.
Yes, Kamal, go ahead.
We spoke about the Council of Islamic Ideology. How many women are on that council? How many women get the chance to be scholars on that council and contribute to bills such as the domestic violence bill?
Let me bring in some thoughts from our YouTube audience who are also commenting on everything you are saying, guests. Saladoro says, the cases in Pakistan are not minuscule compared to the West. How many do not get reported? Kanwal, quick response to that.
As I mentioned earlier, 90% women are facing domestic violence and 0.4% of them actually report it. And Femi, as you very correctly said, it's also because of the shaming associated around a victim. Pakistan in itself is a very patriarchal society, and domestic violence is something most of us grow up internalizing and normalizing, to the point it becomes something that we as women also justify. And our culture teaches us not to interfere when we witness abuse. So when you think about that, if you see a man beating a wife in front of you within the streets, nobody is going to come and stop them. And as a community leader, I witnessed 6 million conversations between women every single month, much of which are around domestic violence. So on a grassroots level, our media and then again our leadership and then our religious thought leaders also mainstream these patriarchal violent views, and it has made the common person assume and equate religious piety with gender discrimination. And most importantly, I do want to add here that those who are inflicting abuse upon us, they know they can get away with it because time and time our authorities have failed to establish, protection or even hold accountable perpetrators of violence against women.
This is a very important person that I want to be part of this conversation. Her name is Shafak. She is a friend of Noor. She was a friend of Noor. And when she spoke to us earlier, this is what she told us. Have a look.
When I heard about what had happened to her friend Noor, I was extremely shocked, and I'm still in trauma. It didn't feel like a reality because you see these things in the news, but for this to happen to someone so close to you has been so devastating. It has not only impacted the friends and family of Noor, but it has affected the entire nation. I believe that the perpetrator Zahir Jafi should be given capital punishment because it is now a time that a precedent must be set for the future that people cannot get away with these crimes, and that justice is truly served for Noor and for all other victims, because it's a rising rate of femicide in Pakistan.
So Shafak makes a suggestion there about capital punishment. It's something that our audience are also thinking about. Bring the death penalty to every man who uses any form of extreme religious beliefs to torture, maim, injure or kill a woman. Alia, do you think that is a popular sentiment in Pakistan, the death penalty? That's the way to deal with sexual violence against women?
I think everybody's knee-jerk reaction is that death penalty should be implemented as far as Noor Muqaddam's case is concerned. But I would go so far to say that has capital punishment for rapists really helped? Zainab, who was, raped and murdered and left on a trash pile, her rapist was, he got the death penalty. Has it made a difference? We've had cases of rape in children's rape, and I'll go so far to say that we're talking about femicide in Pakistan, but there is a huge conversation that needs to happen about sexual violence on boys in Pakistan as well. Zainab's rapist and murderer was also somebody who was sexually abused as a child. Where does the cycle end, really? What are we going to talk about restorative justice? Are we going to talk about, if there's other ways to deal with things? Why are there not mass campaigns happening about gender-based violence and just sexual violence and what happens inside seminaries? There was a video that was leaked not too long ago about, he's a very senior politician, who belongs to a prominent party, who's in alliance with the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. What is happening? Why are there no mass campaigns? We've invited Westerners to come for tourism in Pakistan. Why are there not mass campaigns talking to the mass public about sexual violence being a bad thing? Why is there no accountability for that?
I want to bring in one more thought here, and I think this one is a big one, and it's really about how do men and women view themselves in Pakistan. I cannot comment on this, but I'm going to bring in Sadaf Kamwal. She's a supermodel, she's from Pakistan, and she has very firm views on men and women's role, and maybe this will give us a little insight into how do you even address cultural change when young people have very firm beliefs like this one. Let's have a look, let's have a listen.
Our culture is our husband. I married him, which means I have to pick up his shoes and iron his clothes. I know where all of Shehroz's things are, and what and when he has to eat. I need to know these things because I am his wife, and I am a woman. He doesn't have to know the same about me. This is what I believe, because this is what I've grown up seeing. This feminism that has become a part of our lives, it's because of liberals. They shared the model.
That was a very popular sentiment. That went viral, that whole conversation, and there was a lot of support for that conversation. I am bringing no judgment here, but I am sharing that with our audience so that they have a better view of where the cultural conversation is happening in Pakistan. If I wanted to ask you, in a sentence, guess, because we've talked about this for quite a while now, what would be the one thing that you would prioritise in terms of tackling sexual violence? It is one thing. I will ask Malika, Kamwal, Alia. One thing, ladies. Malika, please go first.
For me, as Parliamentary Secretary for Law and Justice, it would be implementation of the law, enforcement of the law at all levels, and sensitizing our duty bearers, our police force, our prosecution service, our judges to the needs of women and girls of Pakistan, and ensuring that it's done in a more victim-centered manner.
Malika, thank you so much for bringing the perspective from the government. Appreciate you. Kamwal, one thing.
I think it would be sex education and making resources available at a very grassroots level for everybody around sexual violence.
Kamwal, thank you for being in our conversation today. Alia, what would be your priority to address sexual violence against women in Pakistan?
I have to agree with Kamwal. It's sex education and awareness and gender sensitivity training. When it comes to implementing the law, we're talking about the police force, we're talking about law enforcement agencies. They need to understand that filing, a report, women cannot be turned away. There has to be awareness for these things. They have to do better.
A very important dialogue that should continue. And that is our show for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.